Welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and support for this episode comes from Pigosh Engineering and our Patreon supporters like Alex Kerner. You can visit patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast to support the show for as little as $1 per month. You're about to hear the 8th installment of Bill Yohnka's Yarn Factory Listeners Storytelling event that was recorded live Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at Flanagan's Irish Pub in downtown Kankakee. We will hear from six storytellers today. Kyle Cassidy, who shares the story of how he once threw a famous pop singer to the curb at a club he worked at in New York City. Donna Worth shares a story behind a singing pickle she carries around with her. Darnell Davis Jr., also known as Keep It Smooth, returns to tell a story about a long walk he took in Milwaukee. Mike Leddin shares a tale of how his car was hit by a train in Chicago. Evangeline Johnson says pimpin' ain't easy. And Halina Gumiela has a funny story about a trip her and her husband made to a Chicago restaurant. If you like what you hear and want to join us for the next event, Yarn Factory Listeners takes place the second Tuesday of every month at Flanagan's Irish Pub in the basement of the Majestic in downtown Kankakee. Starts at 7 p.m. There's no admission. It's absolutely free. Thank you to Bill Yohnka, the Kankakee Public Library, Flanagan's Irish Pub, and the Daily Journal for letting us collaborate with them on this monthly event. Welcome to Yarn Factory Listeners.
We have 6 people here tonight who have taken a lot of time and effort and energy and their creativity and spirit and put it in to something special they want to do for you tonight. And to think about how rare it is that we get to hear someone's story exactly how they want to tell it, without any distractions, and being able to be heard and listened to. And I just love, this is one of my favorite parts, is being kind of in the front and seeing what amazing listeners we have. It really is something special to see your faces as this experience happens. So now that we're in the right frame of mind, let's get our first storyteller to the stage. Now, I have a little issue with our first one because so often in local theater, this person is not a good guy. If you know Kyle Cassidy and have seen him in theater, he is simply amazing in his voice, in the way he can bring a character to life, and especially the characters sometimes who aren't very likable. And it's an incredible, a fun little dynamic when you're actually a really likable person, but you're really good at being a bad guy. So let Kyle start walking. Now's the time for you to start walking. Kyle is he's a professional actor and a training and safety coordinator at Shoup Manufacturing. And just an all-around wonderful person, an amazing singer, and our friend Kyle Cassidy.
Bill's a great liar, isn't he? So hello, I'm Kyle Cassidy. I'm an thanks for having me here tonight. And I have my phone with me just because I'm timing myself so I don't ramble on too long tonight. So that's why I'm doing that. So anyways, again, my name is Kyle Cassidy, for those of you who don't know me, which I'm sure is pretty much most of the people in here. But I am going to tell a story tonight about the time I physically had to throw a celebrity out of my job when I lived in New York City. So for those of you who are expecting something, it's going to be a life-changing story, this ain't one of those. So I originally actually didn't grow up in Kankakee County. I grew up on a farm outside of a place called Streator, Illinois, if anyone's familiar with that. And that's about all it's worth. I get it. I moved to Bourbonnais in 2012. So I've been here for about 12 years. I went to Western Illinois University and got my degree. Yeah, any leathernecks in here? There we go. Yeah, neck up. That helps with drinking. So... But I went and I got my degree in musical theater, and literally the day after I graduated, I loaded everything in my 2004 Oldsmobile Alero and hit I-80 to New York City. Literally got my diploma, and the next day was in New York City because my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she lived out there with her roommate, and so I had a place to stay. So it was kind of easy for me to get out there. But I happened to move to New York City in 2009, which was one of the worst financial times to go to the most expensive city in the country. So anyways, as any good aspiring actor does, they know that they're going to have to pay bills while they're waiting for gigs. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm very, very happy with the moderate success I had out in New York. I was the lead in the longest running off-Broadway play for a while. I performed at the famous Sardi's. I was performing every Monday night at a different cabaret like Don't Tell Mamas and things like that. So don't get me wrong. I did enjoy myself out there, but I also had bills to pay. And so I had to get a day job between gigs. And the first day job I had, I was a barback, bus boy, whatever you want to call it, at a fancy seafood restaurant, and I hated it. I had to do things like make butter. It was disgusting. I appreciate people who do that, but I couldn't do it. And then I got a job working at the largest comic book store in North America called Forbidden Planet in Union Square. And it was awesome. I got to literally be paid to be a kid. But I got a phone call one day that our roommate decided to move back to Montana, and so my wife and I had to figure out how to pay the other third of rent that we were going to need to do. So I had to get a big boy day job while I was between gigs. And my wife at the time was working at a very famous club in New York City called Cafe Wah. If you're familiar with that, that's where Bob Dylan got his start. And one of the house bands, their guitarist's wife was a friend with my wife, and she worked at a place called the Soho House. Now, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It was on Sex and the City, and that's why it was kind of a big deal. I don't care about stuff like this, but I needed money. But the Soho House is a British company that makes basically private member clubs / hotels for celebrities so that they have a place to get away from, so they're away from the paparazzi, a place that they can just chill and relax. And we were trained on how to deal with that, so we didn't make them, even though if David Bowie walked in, I was like, oh my God, but I couldn't do anything like that. But she happened to work the front desk. She got me an interview there, and I luckily got the job. And so I started out as a bellman, because the New York Soho House, there's Soho Houses all across the world. Most of them are in London or England, but there's one in Turkey, one in New York, one in Miami, one in Chicago right now, LA. So I started off as a bellman, and then as the years went on, I worked my way up to the front desk, and I was also co-head concierge. And I had to deal with a lot of celebrities. And I say this not to brag, I say this because that's why I have a lot of gray hairs at age 38. You name it, I probably had to deal with them. Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Stanley Tucci, Will Ferrell, Will Smith. I did cocaine with Adele. I wrote an elevator ride with Robin Williams, like you name it, Carmelo Anthony, like all types of celebrities we had to deal with. Now, the Soho House was a private members club, and it was exclusive. You could not enter the building unless you were a member or you were staying at the hotel. So not only did we at the front desk have to check people in, check people out of the hotel, we had to maintain the members check-in because they had to come in and sign their name in and give us their card. We also had event spaces in there that we had to make sure that people knew where they were going. And we also had to be our own security guards because people tried to sneak in all the time, okay? And we had to maintain doing all of this all the time because we were 24/7 because we were a hotel. So one day, let me see where I'm doing on time. So one day, everyone on my shift happened to call out from a 3 to 11 shift, except for myself and my manager was kind of MIA anyways. He would just kind of show up at the front desk every once in a while just to make sure I was alive. But it was from a 3 p.m. to an 11 p.m. shift, which was usually our busiest time. And this happened to be a time where we had events going on and we had a party going on. It was just nuts. And so I got a phone call from a celebrity named Kesha. Now, does anybody know who Kesha is? For those of you who don't know who Kesha is, she is a singer who was famous in the early 2010s. Somebody help me if I'm wrong with that. Tick tock on the clock and the party. Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Ooh, don't want to bring him up now. But that was that singer. And she was not a member of the club. Now, what our managers used to like to do sometime to get more people interested, if celebrities would want to come to the club, they would call ahead or their management would get a hold of us and I would take them on a tour or they would get put on someone's guest list so that they could come experience and then hopefully they would want to become members of this exclusive club. Yay! Nobody cares. Anyway, so they call up and they're like, hey, Kesha would like to come to the Soho House tonight. And I said, I put on my best Midwestern voice and face, like, one moment, I'll go ahead and check that out for you while I am having chaos in front of me. Everyone's checking in and checking out. I got people trying to sneak in. I'm trying to take everyone's membership. It was nuts. Nobody cared. But of course, as the consummate professional I tried to be, I was going to take care of it. So I called my general manager. His name was Pierre, and he was from France. I'm not making that up. And I said, Pierre, Kesha's on the line. Kesha? Who is Kesha? I said, she's a singer, and I proceeded to sing those songs over the phone in front of a line of 10 people. And he's like, well, just put her on my list with 2 people, and she can bring 2 people. And I said, okay, cool, I'll take care of that. So I hung up the phone, got back on the phone with Kesha, and I was like, okay, so you're going to be on my general manager's list. His name's Pierre. You can bring 2 people. Just let me know when you get here, because I'm going to be here the rest of the night. And she click. So an hour goes by. I had one of the 2 peaceful moments. There was nobody in the lobby. And the door just gets kicked in. And there's Kesha, 4 sheets to the wind, with 12 people. Now, I can usually assess situations and take care of it, but I was at my wit's end. And if any of you know me, my fuse is pretty long. It was this long that night. And she stumbles up, and I say that as a kind of way of transportation. She stumbles up to the front desk, and she says, I'm here to go to the house. I said, hi, Kesha. I know you're here, but unfortunately, if you're going to go up to the club, you can only bring 2 people. I'm just going to the house. Let me in. Yes, Kesha, you are more than welcome to come in, but you cannot bring this many people. You're allowed 2 people. And then she did the one thing that the rest of us that worked the front desk hated more than anything. She put her finger right in my face and said, do you know who I am? Yes, Kesha, I do know who you are, and you're obviously not famous enough to be a member of our club. So I will say again, you can go upstairs, but with 2 people. I was done. So then she proceeded to reach down to what I thought was going into her purse to get her identification. She brings up her stiletto in her right hand and swings it and connects right in my left temple. Now remember, I'm the only one down there. With her and a gaggle of 12 twinks and girls and you name it. I realize I'm bleeding. I go around the table. I fireman carry her over my shoulder, kick the door open, and chuck her onto the curb. And I said, you're done. Get out. Tick-tock, your clock is done. And they all leave. And I go back, I put a Band-Aid on, and finish getting everybody checked in, because again, I'm the only one down there. About 40 minutes pass after that. Pierre comes out of my GM, Frenchman Pierre, comes out of the elevator and goes, where is Kesha? Not, Kyle, you're bleeding. Oh my God, what happened? Not, Kyle, you're the only one down here. Do you need any help? Not, Kyle, you're doing a really great job of holding down the fort tonight. No, Kyle, where is Kesha? I said, Pierre, I had to throw her out. You what? I put her on my list. You did, Pierre, with 2 people. She brought 12 people, and she hit me with her shoe. And he looks at me, a little dumbfounded. He goes, I didn't like her music anyway, and walked away. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Kyle Cassidy. Let's give him another big round of applause. Our second storyteller tonight, and Kyle's got to go to Chicago for a rehearsal, but he was able to fit it in. Wow. There you go. Our second storyteller is honestly somebody I had hoped would do this since we first started. We first started doing this months and months and months ago, because I think she's a wonderful storyteller, and she's kind of at the epicenter of a lot of just good stuff. I think she spends a lot of her life just thinking about ways to make life better for other people, her family, and people in our community. So I think it's a real honor to have her here, Donna Worth.
Thank you, Bill. I talk about my hometown a lot. I think many of you here in the room have heard me go on and on about Ladd, Illinois, a quiet little town similar to Mayberry. It really was an idyllic place to grow up. But it was boring. Until that one week, every other summer, when my Arizona Rooney cousins rolled into town. My mom's brother, Uncle Jim, and his family would roll up in their 65 Woody station wagon filled with, yes, my Uncle Jim, my Aunt Rose, 8 kids, and a cooler of buttig meat. Look that up, youngsters. There were 6 kids in my mom's family and a Scotch-Irish family, so I had a lot of Rooney cousins in the area. But this family was exotic. Number one, they moved. I'd never met anyone who'd moved before. The girls in the family all had big hair and big curlers that they put in every night. They shaved their legs, and they had one of those cosmetic cases full of makeup. The only makeup at my house was those teeny tiny little Avon lipstick samples. Again, anyone over 50 will know what I'm talking about there. The boys were all big and loud and hungry. Every year, the very first meal was always Illinois sweet corn, probably exotic to them now in Arizona, and rabs. I have another Ladd-ite here. Rabs, which were technically tortellini, which the little Italian ladies made in the church basement once a month. Somehow, all 15 of us sat around that Formica table in our little kitchen, and for that one week, my quiet and rather serious household was full of fun and life and laughter. And there were times that I'll always treasure. I don't see my Arizona cousins that often anymore, but I feel very close to them, especially my cousin Sue. So that's how I knew when she called me and let me know that her 45-year-old daughter, beautiful daughter, had passed away. I knew I had to get there. Although it was a really hectic time in my life right then, I was helping care for a woman from our church who was dying of cancer. Our daughter and her husband had just had their second baby, so I was traveling back and forth to Indianapolis and helping them out, which was a joy. Coincidentally, I had a vacation planned to Arizona the following week. And it was Easter. My family was all showing up in a couple days for Easter, for the Easter holiday. So I wasn't quite sure how I was going to pull this off. I didn't tell my cousin that I was thinking about coming because I really didn't think it would happen. I forgot something. We'll get back to the pickle in a little bit. my cousin Sue's daughter Jamie was just a delightful young person. And she had inherited that Rooney gift of a joy of life and a sense of humor and the special gift of knowing how to make people laugh. I read Jamie's obituary online and realized, I think this is going to work. I can go Monday morning after Easter, fly to Arizona, go to the wake Monday night, get to the funeral on Tuesday, fly home on Wednesday, and be back on Thursday for my friend's funeral, who had passed away just a couple days after Jamie's. So I realized my suitcase was already packed for my vacation, so I grabbed this, thinking this would be a good idea for a 3-day trip to Arizona. Monday morning came. My family was still there. I grabbed my backpack. I get on the shuttle, the Bourbonnais shuttle to Midway Airport. Take my time because it's rather early, so I take my time traveling through the airport, and then finally go up to security and go through the security line and hand my ID to the lovely gentleman at the ticket agent booth, and a little red light goes on, which I've never seen or experienced at the airport before. So I'm thinking, this is not good. This is not good. And it took him just a second to say, sweetheart, you're at the wrong airport. Like, what? Since when does Southwest go out of O'Hare? I didn't know that. I was booking my flight at midnight at my daughter's house one night, so I didn't even notice. So anyway, thank you to Southwest. I go back downstairs and they rebook my flight out of that airport, but it's 6 hours later, which honestly, at that point, I could use a little downtime. So we had a call Easter Sunday the day before that my sister-in-law from Cincinnati had passed away after a long illness. So actually a 6-hour nap sounded kind of good to me at this point. So I sat there, got on the flight, go to Phoenix. The only problem was now I'm going to be getting in right at the time of the wake. Now again, I hadn't told my cousin I was coming. I didn't want to have her fuss over worrying about a house guest. So I got an Uber and went straight to the funeral home. And I can imagine, you can picture the scene, this room full of my loud and lovely Rooney cousins who are laughing and crying and celebrating Jamie's life. And in a funeral home where they have the little screen with the pictures, well, this funeral home, the whole back wall was the screen. So everyone was just gushing and telling stories and just having a beautiful time. Well, my cousin Sue sees me and walks up to me and says, I knew you would be here. I knew you would be here. I asked my friend Velma if she would help me turn over Jamie's room. Are you okay with sleeping in Jamie's bed tonight? And I said, of course I am. It'd be my honor. Driving home that night with my cousin Sue and her husband Randy was one of the saddest moments of my life, with them leaving that funeral home without their daughter. But when we got back to their house, we immediately switched into Rooney hospitality mode, and I was making 20 pounds of coleslaw and getting the barbecue sauce ready for the pulled pork sandwiches while Randy was out setting up the tables and chairs in the yard, and Sue was arranging the 12 dozen cookies she'd made and frosted the 6 cakes that she made for the funeral dinner that was going to be at their house, of course, the next day, because that's how they do it. On any typical Sunday, there's 65 people there because that's what's in their immediate family. So this was not really much different than any other day. So the next morning, we go to the beautiful funeral and we spend the whole day with 150 family members and friends of the Rooneys, and just had a lovely day. Fell into bed that night, again at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And now the next morning is when Sue and I finally have a few minutes alone. And she comes in and she sits on the side of the bed with me, and we talk and we cry and we laugh and we cry some more. And I look and I hadn't noticed, because I'd been coming into bed every night after midnight and just crashing into bed, throwing my phone and earrings on this side of the bed. Well, we were sitting on this side and she's talking to me, and all of a sudden I'm distracted by this. And I go, what is that? And she goes, oh my God, Jamie's friend gave this to her. You have to have this. You have to have this. Jamie thought this was hilarious. You have to take this home. Now, this backpack was full. There wasn't room for a bobby pin in here. So I stick it in the side pocket, and she takes me to the airport, and we kiss and hug and say goodbye. And now I'm in a security line again at the airport. And this spunky young gal comes up to me, and we connected and start chatting and have a good, having some fun and snaking through the security line. And then she's getting ready to go. I throw my backpack up on this conveyor belt, and she says, ooh, what's that? And I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm stuffing it in the backpack. I'm like, it's a long story. And she runs off, and she goes, oh, I just thought you were the cool grandma. So she takes off. I'm still giggling as I'm getting on the plane, and I'm trying to find my seat. And I'm walking up, and I go to set my backpack down, and the pickle goes flying out of the backpack under the seat of the lady at the window, and she goes down. I'm like, no! And I literally go diving over the seat to retrieve it so she doesn't reach under and find that under her seat. And then I just sit down in my seat, and I see what's going on here. I see what's going on. We land in Chicago, and I'm running out the airport to get my ride, because now my husband has to pick me up because I'm at the wrong airport and there's no shuttle from O'Hare. So, and if you're in that little taxi lane out there for more than 30 seconds, someone's screaming at you. So I'm running, and all of a sudden I look, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving a whole pile of that's fallen out of my backpack. And so I'm scrambling and putting it all in there, and I get in the car, and I'm laughing, and I start telling him about the whole weekend and how lovely everything was. And I realized, wait a minute, there's some unsuspecting traveler to O'Hare now who's really having a good time, because the pickle's not in my bag anymore. And you notice I have a pickle tonight because I immediately went on Amazon and bought another one. Actually, it's my fourth or fifth pickle. I just keep buy again, because I just keep now sneaking them into people's bags here and there. But when I got home and told my husband about all the wonderful times with my cousin and the story of the pickle, and Jamie had come to live with her mom and dad 2 years before that. Her husband was a firefighter. They had 3 teenagers at home, and he wasn't able to take care of all that and take care of Jamie too. So she went home to live with her mom and dad. And then the family came over, her kids and husband came over to visit her. But that morning on the bed, Sue had told me that the last couple weeks of her life were really rough, and she needed 24-hour care. And this had become her call button when she needed help in the middle of the night. So I want to thank Jamie and all my Rooney cousins for still making us laugh.
Let's give Donna another big round of applause. That was wonderful. Thank you, Donna. I want to have some Rooney cousins now. That is so much fun. Our next storyteller tonight is in a unique group. She now makes up the first husband and wife who have both told stories here. So Evangeline Johnson, her husband Roland was a storyteller a few months ago, did an outstanding job. Roland, thank you for that. She moved to Kankakee in 1978 and was a psychologist from the state of Illinois and in the correctional and juvenile justice. And I love that she hasn't done anything like storytelling since COVID. And now she's getting back into this. And I love that she is retired now and has her favorite T-shirt that says, "Living that retired life, doing what I want, when I want." And I'm glad she wants to tell a story with us tonight. Come on up to the microphone, Van.
Ooh, that light is something else. Well, I'm Evangeline, better known as Van, and yes, I'm a transplant from Chicago. Now, I was debating between two stories. For one, I haven't done storytelling since before COVID, and that was up there in Homewood with Karen, Homewood Storytelling, something like that. So I haven't done that in quite a while. However, 2 years ago, my grandchildren bought me a book that says My Grandmother's Stories. So I was trying to write in this little journal to write some of the stories I've done in life. However, I found out the page was too small. So I couldn't write a story on a page. It took 3 pages, so therefore I put them on the computer, and my husband just recently put something on the computer where I can talk to the computer instead of trying to write them down and all that. However, I was stuck between 2 stories today, and he didn't tell me which one he liked the best. So I was stuck between Pimpin' Ain't Easy or I Love You Too, Daddy. Beware of what you put in writing. So to make it easy, I got a list of 146 stories, but I write them down in case my mind leaves and I don't know. However, I talk to some family members to ask them to help me remember. Their memory is worse than mine. So, but I got titles, because titles will inspire me to tell the stories. So today I'm going to talk about I Love You Too, Daddy, but beware of what you put in writing. And the reason why I say that is because of this particular story has impacted my entire life, even until this day. Believe it or not, there are things that happen to you that have lifelong effects, and you react to them in different ways. This story happened when I was in 7th grade and my brother was in 8th grade. Now, me and my brother always had a very good relationship, but he was the oldest and he was the only boy. And because there was 3 girls under him, he always think that we should listen to him. I was the rebellious one. I would never listen to him. He's talking about, Mom gonna get us, Mom gonna do that. I would never listen to him. I do have another story about I almost had a heart attack because he sat on me till my mother came home. But that's another story. But I was the tomboy in the family and the rebellious one. So we always had a lot of stories because it was the 3 of us right in a row and we didn't have anyone to play with but ourselves. But we had cousins upstairs, but we had a great time. But this story was interesting only because I was in 7th grade and he was in 8th grade. And usually anyone in the 8th grade, when they graduate, if you know anything about Chicago back then, in probably the 50s, the 60s, because I'm not sure when Riverview closed down. It was just like, what's the place up there by Deerfield? Six Flags, but it was on a smaller scale. And this was Riverview. So everyone who graduated 8th grade went to Riverview for graduation. However, I was only in the 7th grade. But my brother had a friend, and his name was John Fuzzy Hair. Believe it or not, and his nickname was Fuzzy. And he was my brother's best friend. However, I didn't know he liked me till he wrote a little letter, those little letters from long time ago where you write, do you like me? Check yes or no. So I checked yes. And I checked yes, or I'm not sure. I checked yes because it was 2 letters. I checked yes or told him yes or something. But a couple of days after that, he wrote a letter and gave it to my brother to give to me. So I'm reading this letter just fascinated because remember, I didn't tell you, but he was my very first boyfriend in 7th grade, 13 years old. So he wrote me this nice little love letter talking about he loved me. And would I go with him on graduation afternoon to Riverview with the other 8th graders? And I said, wow, I'm going to go to Riverview and hang out with someone older without any parent supervision. But I thought it was going to be cool because my brother was going too. That's a whole nother story that I get to later down the road. So evidently, since my brother gave me this letter from his best friend, and I read it, and he's just pouring his feelings out. Well, it's not much of a feeling, just maybe I love you 4 or 5 times, whatever it was. But I knew it was I love you. So I sat up there and wrote this letter that night and gave it to my brother to get to him. So I'm thinking, okay, everything is cool. The next day, I don't get a letter back, but I'm saying, okay, everything is cool because I'm going to get something. I don't know if it was that same night or the next night, but we're sitting at the kitchen table because we sat as a family to eat. So we're sitting down at the kitchen table, and I'm left-handed, so I sit at the head of the table because my elbows would bump either somebody in the family because I was left-handed, so they thought I was kind of off the beaten path. However, while sitting at the dinner table, my father pulls this letter out of his pocket. So I'm not knowing what it is until he started reading the letter, and I'm just, wow! I'm embarrassed, ashamed, and all this other stuff, and my sister and brothers are just cracking up, laughing. My mother's smiling, but she cracking up laughing. But my father didn't think it was a joke. After he read this letter, he said, oh, you love this little nappy-headed boy? And I was, who is he? And all this stuff. And I can't even remember if I said anything. But the impact was, since I love this little nappy-headed boy, I had to write my father a love letter. Because he wanted to see and know how I felt about him. And I'm just saying, wow. I said, do I really got to do that? I'm saying this to myself because I might get slapped upside the head or anything. But I said, okay, Daddy. So I wrote a letter, and I gave it to him when he got off of work the next day or something. So I'm thinking, okay, I gave my daddy the love letter, so it's all over with. However, dinner that night, he sits up there in front of everybody again and read the letter that I wrote him. He read, oh, I like you, Daddy. I like you very much, Daddy. You are everything to me. But he didn't like that. Why? Because I didn't tell him I loved him. I just said I liked my daddy and how much I liked him. He said, but you still love this little nappy-headed boy. And this is all you think about me? I said, oh my God. So I had to write a 3rd letter. I said, oh my God. Well, I did write the 3rd letter. The 3rd letter just said a couple of times, I love you, Daddy. You're the greatest person in the world. And all this kind of stuff, but he was satisfied with that. But then I said, okay, he hadn't read it, so everything is over with. Then about 5 minutes later, he said, but you can't go out for graduation with that little nappy-headed boy. And see, all this time, and it took me a while because I skipped some part, but all this time I was wondering, why the hell did my brother give him that letter? See, my thing from then on too is always you got to know what people's agenda are. For real, because I'm wondering to myself, you gave me the first letter, so why wasn't there no problem? Why didn't you give Daddy the first letter to say how this little boy liked me? No, but the letter I gave you to get him, you gave to my father. And my brother just cheesing away. But see, me and my brother's contentious relationship has always been, we always was cool, is that payback is a bitch. Because anytime he did anything to me, he thought it was done when he did something to me. But he always knew that Van is going to do something because I always got him back for anything he done. Even when I thought I was having that heart attack when he said it. But those are the kind of games we played and stuff. But the impact, and then what I didn't realize was the reason why he didn't want me to go to graduation, he really didn't want to be bothered with his friend because that was his best friend. And I just didn't think about that at the moment. I just figured it was him, but that was his best friend. No, you cannot have a relationship with my best friend because that means he's going to drop my brother and mess with me. And that's another story about pimping ain't easy because all these boys that was coming to my house, which I thought was his friend, he was pimping me and my sister. Because we couldn't have boy company, but he could have company, so anybody came in the house got to play with everybody in the house, right? But the long impact it had on me, writing this letter, that's why I say be careful of what you put in writing, is because when I had other boyfriends and stuff like that, all the way up to not up to now, but all the way up until I got married, even with my husband. The only love I put in a letter is love always. Sign my name. I don't put nothing with a lot of emotions in it because you never know who's going to read these letters. And I've learned you got to be careful what you say on the phone because it used to be nobody could take your phone calls till you got these new cell phones. And then they start taping your phone calls. So you got to be careful what you say. But you got to be really careful about what you put in writing. And my husband knows because he would always say, I love you, Van. I just say ditto. I just say, okay. But he will have to admit maybe the last 7 to 10 years, if he say I love you, I'll say I love you back. But it's not that we don't have feelings. I don't have feelings for him. It's just that I have to be careful. I'm just telling you, these are the impacts that happen. You know, things people say to you or things you do will have a long range effect. My daddy reading these letters at the kitchen table, it just traumatized me to this day. Well, I can now, I may not initiate the I love you, but I can respond. I love you. But that's my story. So I love you too, Daddy, but beware of what you put in writing.
Thank you, Van. Let's give her another round of applause. Van, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So our next storyteller, I'm a little concerned about because Kankakee does this. I think we do it very well. You can applaud for that. I think we do things like this very well. It's not a very covert mission because our next storyteller, Mike, has told us that he is a trustee for the village of Frankfurt. You know how Frankfurt's always trying to steal our hoity-toity upper-class ideas, bring them up there. So, he's another unique combo. I think Mike will make it so we have the first daughter and father who have both told stories. Mike's daughter, Taylor, told a wonderful story a few months ago. Is Taylor here? Where are you, Taylor? We're cheering for you. There you are. And Mike has been married to his wife, Tammy, for 11 years, and combined, they have a combined family with 6 amazing children and 2 granddaughters. And we'd like to welcome to the stage Mike Leddin.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was looking at the Facebook page and everybody who was going to be doing this tonight, and so I saw Kyle and what his background was, and Donna and her background, and Van with all her storytelling. So this is the time in the program where we really bring it down a notch and make everybody feel like they may be able to do this at some point. So yes, I am from Frankfurt, so I was glad that you guys welcome. Well, none of you welcomed me here. I just showed up, so I'm glad to be here. And as Bill mentioned, my daughter did this a couple months ago and told the story about my son Danny, who's autistic and nonverbal. So he gives us lots of stories. I'm not going to give you a Danny story tonight, but I'll give you two things. One's pretty quick. So I was blessed to have the most wonderful mom in the world. I still get choked up about it. But, when I grew up, it was time before participation trophies. So we had to earn a trophy. And I didn't earn too many trophies. So my mom came up with this thing, and I just bring this up, Taylor mentioned this to me tonight, that she called it the Turkey of the Year Award. And it was, she would collect throughout the year the goofy things that we did, and somebody would get a trophy for the most ridiculous thing that they did. So that tradition carries on today. We've been doing it for 40-some years, and now it's her granddaughters who took it over. They write up the stories, they tell what everybody did, and they determine who's going to win. I've been a multiple-year winner. Lifetime Achievement Award, I think, is in my future, so I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, my story was when I was growing up, I grew up in Riverdale. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Riverdale. So right outside of Chicago, it's a blue-collar neighborhood. There were 5 kids in my family and our parents, and we lived in a 1,000-square-foot home with 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and it seemed large to us. You know, we never felt like we were missing out on anything. And Riverdale is surrounded by train yards. So you never knew when you went somewhere if it was going to take you 5 minutes or 50 minutes to get there if you got stuck by one of the trains, because the trains would just sit across the crossing waiting to get into the railroad yard. So when I was in high school, when I was 16 years old, I was coming home and the bus got caught at the railroad crossing. So back then, they used to have a caboose at the end of the train, and somebody was manning the caboose. So he came off the caboose, came out, raised the gate so the bus could cross. So I got home and walked in the house, and there was nobody there, which was really unusual with 7 people living in the house. And somebody, you never seem to have any private time. And the one thing that was there was my dad's car, because he had taken the train downtown. So I've been driving for all of 3 months, and I came in the house, dropped my stuff, decided I needed to go to McDonald's, jumped in the car, went right back to that train crossing. Of course, the gates are still down. So I get in line like everybody else, and there were 6 tracks, and the train was on the 6th track. So I go up the little lift onto the rails, and the car dies. And the car was a 1967 Ford Falcon. Back then, it was a stick shift, but they used to call it 3 on the tree because you were shifting this way. And so car stalls. I'm on the 2nd set of rails, and the train's on the 6th set of rails. So I'm kind of panicking, not because of the train, but because I'm backing everybody up and been driving for all of 3 months and a little concerned about that. So I'm trying to get this darn thing started. It won't start. And I look across, and there's this lady in a Lincoln Continental Mach 5, I think they were called at the time. It was like a pretty fancy car for Riverdale, so it kind of stuck out. And the other thing that stuck out is that the train was over here, but she was looking this way with this horrific look on her face. And I'm like, what's that about? So I look, and there's a train on the track that I'm on. Now, it's going into the railroad yard, so it's not going very fast. So I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to start the car, and the train's coming. Well, my dad was about 5'6", but he seemed like he was like 6'8". You know, he had this, he's a wonderful grandpa. He was a wonderful dad. But I tell the kids that the grandpa you know is not the dad that I knew. So, Van mentioned a letter that said, I don't think I ever heard the words "I love you" until I became a grown man. Now he throws it out there once in a while. But back in the day, I didn't think he really liked me very much. And, honestly, for good reason. I wasn't that likable. So I was trying to get his car off the road. I'm thinking, should I jump out and push it? What should I do? What should I do? And, having a 16-year-old, I wasn't really thinking very clearly. So I basically sat there and thought my way through it until the train was right here. And then the train hit the car. And fortunately, a 1967 Ford Falcon is built like a tank. And it hit it square in the side. So I was on 140th and Indiana Avenue. I slid down the rails past Edbrook to Michigan. And as it's sliding down the rails, I'm thinking, should I get out? I probably should have thought about that well before that. So then I slid over to the passenger side of the bench seat, and I'm like, well, if I get out, I'm probably going to get run over by the car and the train. So I just sat there in the passenger seat and waited for the train to stop. So then the train stops, I get out of the train, out of the car, and I go around to the front, and the engineer's looking and I pop the hood to look at I don't know why. It could have used oil, and I couldn't do anything about it, The only thing I know about a car is that you have to put gas in it. But other than that, I know if I like them. And I used to think I knew how to drive them, but not so much, I guess. So I'm doing that. The engineer's looking at me. Then all of a sudden, there's the fire, the police, an ambulance, and a tow truck. And now I'm on the second rail. The tow truck comes. They can't get close enough to the car to hook it up and take it off. So he says, do you think you can start it? So I get in it, and the damn thing started right up. So I back up 2 rails. He hooks it up, takes it away. The police officer drives me home. And now an hour later, I'm sitting on the couch back at home wondering what the hell happened and how I'm going to explain this. And that's my train story. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let's give Mike another big round of applause. It's good when there's a story like that and he might get hit by a train, but he's here. So it worked. It's going to be okay. I like that little insurance. How many people here today have I asked how to pronounce Halina's last name? Like just 3. Our next storyteller is Halina Gumiela. Mm-hmm. Yep. Another person who's been here since the 70s, who moved here and is a Kankakee area transplant and has now been here for 48 years. And we're happy that she's been a regular listener for so long at just about every one of our events, and eventually decided, this is something she's going to do. So let's welcome Halina up to the stage to tell her story tonight.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I come every month to hear the stories that are here, and every month I'm totally blown away at how few people I know who are here, even after living here for 48 years. So I know that you also don't know me. I don't know you, you don't know me. But we're human beings, so you're all making some assumptions about me. You're looking at me and you're judging me in certain ways. You're looking at what I'm wearing, how I wear my hair, my glasses. And based on those judgments, you're making assumptions about me. Now, we're humans, so this is what we do. And sometimes the assumptions that we make are not very favorable to us, but sometimes they are. And this is a story of a time when they are. Okay, so several years ago, before the pandemic, that's pre-pandemic PP, the Art Institute hosted an exhibition of the art of Winslow Homer. And since I'm a designer and in that field, I really wanted to go and see this show. So my husband, Terry, and I decided to take a day and go to Chicago. And pre-pandemic, of course, when you went to Chicago, there was a certain boomer, I'm a boomer, there is a boomer dress code. So you get a little spiffed, you might put a nice jacket on and a nice pair of slacks and some good shoes, and you get yourself kind of dressed up to go to Chicago. So that's what I did, and I probably looked a bit like I do right now. And so we were going to go and spend the day there. We thought, okay, we'll go see the exhibit, and then maybe we'll go out to eat, and going to really make a day of it. So we get dressed up, we go to Chicago, and it's a wonderful exhibit, and we have spent many hours there, but now we're exhausted, and it's time to go to the next thing we're going to do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go out to eat. And of course, we have made no reservations because we didn't know how long it would be until we would be done with the show. But we wanted to go to a restaurant that had been recommended by my friend Laura Hayes. And it was pretty close. It was walking distance from the Art Institute, about a block and a half on the west side of Michigan Avenue. And so we set off to go there. We get there, we open the door, and the place is slammed. But we go up to the hostess desk anyway, and we put our name in, and they tell us, oh, it's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour. You sure you want your name on the list? And we looked at each other and we said, it's going to take us probably 45 minutes or an hour to walk someplace else and go through the same thing. So we decided we'd wait. So we found a place to sit. There was a bench in front of, kind of in front of the window. And so I sat down on the bench and I got busy doing what I usually do when I have some extra time. And my husband, Terry, usually makes friends with everybody else who's waiting for a table, which he was busy doing. So about 10 minutes go by and I look up and there is a man, nicely dressed, kind of nice pleated pants, a nice shirt, a tie, and he's walking very quickly toward me. And he bends over and he says, how long were you told you would have to wait? 45 minutes to an hour, I say. And he said, I think we can do better than that. So he turns around and he disappears. And he's gone for maybe 5 minutes or so. And he comes back and he says, follow me. So grab my husband and we follow him through the restaurant. The restaurant honestly is completely slammed. You know how sometimes you go in and they say, oh no, we don't have any tables, but you look around and there are like 10 tables right in front of you. But this was an honest case. They had no tables. The bar was completely jammed. Every table, every booth, every thing we passed completely full of people. So they take us to the back of the restaurant, which also is full of people. And there's a little area there with what looks like a folding screen. And right within the kind of the arms of this folding screen is a little table, set up a table for two. And so they have us sit down there and thank you very much, we say, and took off our jackets and put our things down. And we're sitting there and we look up and here's this same gentleman who brought us to the table. He is approaching us with 2 flutes of bubbly liquid, which we are assuming is champagne. So he sets these down on the table and says, this is a compliments of the restaurant that you had to wait so long to get a table. And I'm thinking, wow, this is great. I wonder if we're like the 500th people to be seated, and this is our reward. And so we're sipping away at our champagne, and everything is going great. And then the server comes up. Now, Jared is our server, young man, and he has approached us with a menu and wants to know if we want some appetizers. So looking at the appetizer list, of course, he's going to tell us about these appetizers now. And he takes a microscope and he looks at each individual listing, and we know about its source and how it's made and how it's seasoned and how it's everything that we could want about it. And finally, we choose an appetizer selection, and he goes away. And very shortly, another man, like an older man than the original person, very nicely dressed, approaches us, and he gives us a name and he gives us a card, and he says, "I am the facilities manager, and I want to tell you a little bit about the restaurant." So he told us how this had been originally many, many years ago at the turn of the 19th century. It had been a manufacturing center, and they remodeled it, and they tried to do it within that ethos of the time, giving it a very beautiful look in black and white with shiny tile. They really did a terrific job and used the artwork and the advertising of the time that actually advertised the products that they sold. So he gave us this little walk through the restaurant and what they had done there, and then wished us, well, enjoy your meal, and then he left. Well, at this time, our appetizer was arriving, so put the appetizer down, and we are very, very hungry by now, and we can only think about eating. But as we're getting ready to eat, here this very good-looking young woman in like a black and white chic uniform approaches our table, and she gives her name, and she says, "I'm the special events coordinator for the restaurant," and went on to tell us that they could accommodate a group anywhere from 12 to 400 people in all of the different rooms. There's a room downstairs and several rooms upstairs. There's a special bar. There's even an area that's glassed in that they can close the doors of, and you can have your own private party there. And so, thank you very much. We're actually very hungry, and so she wishes us, have a good meal, and it was very nice meeting you, and she leaves. So we start eating our appetizer, and we said, I wonder if we're winning a group dine-in or something like that. Is that what's happening here? And so, so we have finished our appetizer, and Jared, our server, comes back to the table, and he tells us that he's got a lot of specials to go over with us. So starts at special number 1 and tells us how it was sourced, how it was cooked, one after another through all of the items on the list, and finally we make a choice of what we want to have, and he goes away. But in his place, here comes a sommelier, and he is telling us how the restaurant casts a very wide net all around the world, getting the best varietal wines and the best vintages. And then he also tells us more about the beer and the liquor that they also can provide in the restaurant. Well, my husband and we are not big wine drinkers, so we didn't order anything. But he, said, "Well, thank you for listening to me, and enjoy your meal." So we're thinking, finally, we are going to get a chance to just enjoy the food and get the food. And it is put down in front of us. Our entree is put down in front of us, and we eat that. And nobody interrupts us during the entree. And then it's dessert time. So Jared, our server, comes back, and again, he's got a long list of desserts, and he's going through them one at a time, telling us everything about how they were thought of, and how they're decorated, and how they're baked or cooked, or if they're made in store or what. And my husband is a big dessert eater, so he was all ears. And usually he picks a dessert and we share it. But this time I saw one that I was particularly interested in myself, but I had a question. So I look up at Jared, and I'm very surprised to see that he's not looking at me at all. His eyes are laser focused on the right side of my dinner plate, where my black notebook and pen are laying. And all of a sudden, it just hit me. Oh my gosh. The table, the champagne, the visits from all of the staff telling us what the restaurant has to offer. I looked up at him and said, Jared, I am not a restaurant critic. So a few years before that, when I got into my early 60s, I realized that I was going through life and doing all kinds of things, seeing plays, movies, talking to people, seeing exhibits, and I really didn't remember very much about them. So I decided I was going to get myself a notebook and a pen, and keep the notebook and the pen someplace handy. These are small, they fit into my purse, and I can take it, virtually anywhere I go, and I can write notes, and then I can be reminded of my life and what I've actually done. So it just so happens that when I was sitting in the entryway of the restaurant trying to pass the time, I was writing out my notes from the exhibit that I had just seen. And that's when the manager first saw me. So I highly recommend to all of you that you get yourself a little notebook and a pen and keep it handy. And then if you happen to find yourself in a very busy restaurant with no reservation, just get out your little notebook and start writing.
Let's give Halina another big round of applause. Oh, we've got all sorts of pockets and things for those notebooks and pens. What a wonderful idea. We have one piece of business that I'm always surprised people don't realize this, because I feel like I talk about it all the time, is that if the storytellers agree to it, their stories are part of Kankakee Podcast, which is a wonderful thing. Thank you, Jake LaMore, who's here. So a lot of times there are friends and family who can't be here, or people who live far away can experience the stories, and it really is a pretty cool thing. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for you and Pathfinder for putting together the sound stuff, and it's a good partnership. Thank you very much. Also, at the table over there where you can sign up for the Kankakee Podcast newsletter, grab a Kankakee Podcast sticker for your computer, or wherever you want to put stickers. You make that decision yourself. There's also a little sign-up sheet that just says story ? You ? And you can write your name on there and let us know how to get a hold of you. And someday you can be one of the people telling a story. Another thing, we're going to do a regular storytelling in December. People say, are you doing December? Yeah, we're doing December. We do this every month. We're also going to do January. Now, we're venturing out and doing something a little different for January. So January, I'm going to put the word out to the community here and the community at large to, instead of just having a regular storytelling night like this, we'll have a theme. So and it's a little self-serving, because my other role is the executive director of the Kankakee Riverfront Society. And today we had our pre-construction meeting for the start of the first phase of our river walk. So that's starting in the fall. So we're starting that. And I kind of wanted to I should be a little self-serving about this. I'd put a lot into this. I shouldn't just. So I wanted to gather some stories about the river. So something we all kind of have some experience with. Maybe people grew up around it. Maybe people have specific things that happened next to the river and how the river kind of weaves into so many of our lives and stories. So that would be January. So if you're interested in that, put your name on the sheet too and say, I've got a river story I want to tell you. So we will do that in January. That'll be something different to look forward to, and looking forward to hearing those stories. Our final storyteller of the night is somebody we've had a few of these now since we've been doing this. This is like 8 months or something like that, 7, 8 months, I think so. People who have been here the whole time, 8? Yeah, 8 months. So we've had a couple repeats, and this is a repeat, but he's not the same story, but a repeat person. And then I feel bad. Do I do a repeat intro? Like I have to say the same thing again? But the last intro was so much fun. But he is just an outstanding, I'd still say young man, because I think he's younger than me. But he's and he is an all-star at the Kankakee Public Library, but also puts on events, and he has the coolest nickname in town, Keep It Smooth. And every time I see him, he calls me Big Dog, which, man, nothing makes you feel better than when someone calls you Big Dog. If you haven't had someone call you Big Dog, let me know. I'll call you Big Dog. You'll see how it feels, and you'll say, man, I like that. I want that. I want that feeling all the time. So let's welcome to the stage Darnell Davis. Keep it smooth for our final storyteller of the night.
We're going to get comfortable. How y'all feeling? Everybody doing all right? Come on now. Come on now. Give it up for Bill for putting this together, creating this amazing ambiance and energy. You know what I'm saying? Give it up for all the storytellers y'all have heard so far tonight. They have done amazing jobs. And hopefully I can bring this thing back around and we can end it on a strong note. And because everybody else has been doing it, I'll get in trouble if I don't do it. Shout out to my wife in the back of 12 years, you know what I'm saying? Give her some love for coming out to support. 12 years, 5 kids, and a lot of headaches, but we still together, you know what I'm saying? But my story's a lengthy one like the last one, but it's not as heavy. And I'm gonna get off into this thing. The title of this story is The Longest Walk of My Life. The setting is 2008. I'm 21 years old at the time, and I'm living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm holding down one job. I've been working at this place for 3 months. It's called Cargill. It's a slaughterhouse in Milwaukee. And if you ever worked at Moment's Meatpacking, you kind of got an idea of what I'm up against and what I'm dealing with. It's not fun. It's a refrigerated place, but it's a very good paying job if you can hold it down. And my life at the time, I was a newly transplant in Milwaukee, so the only thing I did was I was either at home with my family or I was at work with my coworkers. You know what I'm saying? So my coworkers would, of course, become my friends. But my friends at this place were some interesting characters. You know what I'm saying? We worked the night shift, and they were already hired on. So what they did on lunch break is they would go pile up 5 or 6 deep in a Tahoe or a Suburban, and they would take part in recreational activities that would make Cheech and Chong proud. I swore, I thought they was training for the Snoop Dogg Olympics at one point, you know what I'm saying? And then eventually in time, I moseyed my way into that truck. Like, hey, you know, we're gonna partake, we're gonna have us a little something to sip on because we work in a refrigerated place, so if you heat up the inside of the body, you're gonna be warm on the outside of the body too. But this day in particular, and up until this day, I had been working on getting hired on. When you work a temp to hire job, you know, them 3 months is important. Them 3 months is where they testing your dedication, your loyalty, your hard work, your ethic, all of this. And I'm still taking part with the friends in the break and on lunch. But my guy would tell me, he's like, bro, what you need to do is you need to start detoxing. I don't know if you need to start taking this pill called niacin. I don't know if anybody's ever take part in niacin. It's no fun. It's like laying on an acupuncture bed of needles. You feel the toxins coming out of your pores. I don't know if I got any anime fans in here, but if you ever seen Dragon Ball Z, when Majin Buu would work and the steam would come out, that's what it felt like. It felt like it's literally pouring out of you. And I remember It was one morning. It was payday. I didn't have any more cigarettes. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm determined, for any of the cigarette smokers, y'all know, hey, if that's the last cigarette gone, I'm headed to the store to get me another pack. I ain't finna be going too long. But my sister needed to be at school by 8. My niece needed to be at school by 7:30. And I don't have a mode of transportation of my own. So I'm thinking, like, I've walked from Kankakee to Bradley. I've walked from Bradley, Bourbonnais back to Kankakee. It can't be that long of a walk to walk across Milwaukee to go pick up my paycheck that I didn't earn. You know what I'm saying? And I remember my sister telling me, like, DJ, Milwaukee is not like Kankakee. Like, whatever you thought you did out there, you can't do that here. This town is a lot bigger, and it's going to take a lot longer. And I'm like, sis, look here. I'm young. I'm a vibrant 21-year-old. I got all the energy in the world. As long as these two legs don't give up on me, I'm going to get to where I need to be so I can get my cigarettes. I'm going to come on back to this house. She drops me off on the corner of 52nd and Sherman in Milwaukee. Well, she's dropping my nieces off at the school that's right here. My temp service was on the corner of 33rd and Lincoln. After a while, I went and Googled it. I found out I walked 5.9 miles from that school to this temp agency just to pick up this check. The whole time I'm walking, I'm watching cabs fly by. I'm watching buses fly by. Now, as a child visiting Milwaukee, we would kind of taunt the cab. So, like, when you see a cab come up, we leave in the corner store with some candy. Taxi! And they slam on the brakes, and then we haul run in the other direction. And, I'm thinking, it's just like in the movies. It works every time. We've seen it. We've tested this thing. This day, I couldn't have yelled taxi hard enough every single time. I never saw brake lights. I never heard the brakes screech. I almost swear to you, I heard the car speed up away from me as I'm yelling taxi. Like, dude, come on, man, I'm not a kid. I want you to take me to go get my money, leave the meter running. I'm going to go cash this check, leave the meter running. Then you're going to drop it off at home, and I'm going to pay you for the whole shebang bag. You know what I'm saying? It's not that complicated. I get to the temp agency. I get my check, and I start walking back home. The whole time, I'm still looking, yelling, taxi. Taxi! Watching these buses go past me, and I'm like, dude, Milwaukee just ain't got no heart. Like, why is it so cold? Everybody's just driving past me like, okay, don't worry about it. I started yelling every obscenity I could think at these cabs that was driving past me. I was doing everything but quoting the scripture when I was watching these things go past me. I get to the corner store where I'm finna cash my paycheck. Corner store is like 5 blocks from home. So then I walked the rest of the way to the crib. I started my walk at 7:30 that morning. When I walked into my house that afternoon, it was 12:30 p.m. And the only times I had stopped walking was to stand in line to get my paycheck and then to stand in line to cash my paycheck. So 5 hours of nonstop walking. I promise you, Kankakee ain't nothing like Milwaukee. It would have never taken me this long to walk somewhere to pick up my paycheck and then walk back to the crib. When I get into the house, the first thing I do is I go to the refrigerator, I grab this jug of blue raspberry drink. It wasn't even called juice, it was literally called blue raspberry drink. And I took the cap off and I just started chugging this thing, ignoring the fact that when you take a niacin, the instructions I was given was to only drink water. Only drink water. As I'm holding this jug up to my face, my sister walks in the house and she's like, dude, how long you been back? I said, I just got here. It's 12:45. I've been walking for 5 hours strong. My legs hurt. My back is killing me. And in that moment, my job calls me. Hey, come on in a little bit earlier before your shift. It's time to take that drug test because it's time for you to get hired on. You've been putting in all that hard work. It's time for you to come on and cross over. And I'm freaking out, y'all. I'm like, Lord, any other day would have been cool. Today of all days, I jump in the car with my sister. We stop at the gas station. I grab 2 big liters of water. I'm praying that when I get to this place to take this drug test, the only thing that's going to come out of me is this water. I just purge into my system. And when I get there, I go into the clinic. The lady gives me the cup. By the time she gets to put the cap on the cup and does a little shake motion, she looks at me. She looks back at the cup. She shakes it again. She was like, "Oh, okay, well, thank you, but you can go home now." I was like, "Wait a minute, you told me to come in early before my shift started so I can knock this out. I'm finna go." She's like, "No, the results are already showing me you came back positive for marijuana. And now we need to send it off to the lab to see if it's under a certain threshold to make sure that you've actually quit smoking or if this is just something you're trying to mask or whatever." And I'm devastated. I'm heartbroken. The first real job I found in Milwaukee, the first real good job that I had, my ignorance of not letting go of this smoke stuff messed up my opportunities and put me back at square one in a town I'm not familiar with, trying to find a job. The moral of my story, y'all, is don't allow recreation and ignorance to ever come in between you and your livelihood. And it's true. Patience really is a virtue. I have been keeping smooth, y'all. I appreciate y'all for letting me come in here and share my little story. Appreciate you, Bill, for giving me this opportunity.
Keep it smooth, as always, keeping it incredibly smooth, even through adversity, incredibly smooth. That's our deal for tonight. We hope you hang around and talk to each other, but make sure if you are...
Once again, so many great stories told in this episode that it makes it really difficult to choose a favorite. I will say, though, I feel like this month's stories had a lot of humor in them. I laughed so hard several times, and I don't know about you, but with the way life has been lately, I really needed all of those laughs. That concludes this episode of Yarn Factory Listeners on Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you to Kyle Cassidy, Donna Worth, Darnell Davis Jr., also known as Keep It Smooth, Mike Leddin, Evangeline Johnson, Halina Gumiela, Bill Yohnka, Flanagan's Irish Pub, the Kankakee Public Library, Downtown Kankakee, and to you, the listener. Please make sure to subscribe and follow Kankakee Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are found. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Alex Kerner for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries on.